Justice Sanko Ibrahim Mohammed did same thing, but nothing changed. Adeoye.
Well, I think in the first place, it's an admission, the fact that these are not well, judiciary. We are talking about it boils down to corruption, because a compromised judiciary cannot defend democracy, cannot sustain good governance. Because when there is corruption, when there is misgovernance, it's the judiciary that everybody looks up to. In the past, we used to talk about the judiciary not being paid, but I think that is now in the past. The CJN now, about 64 million naira a year. I think about 7-point-something million annual basic salary for judges. So that happened recently. The new government increased by about 300%. So there's no justification for judiciary to be corrupt. And then in the words of the CJN, he said the process despicable and odious conduct. That's a very serious indictment. And then what we urge the CJN to do is to translate his words to action. Because in the case where each time we just make statements about corruption, but we don't see practical steps being taken. And we know there are a lot of things we can do to checkmate corruption in the judiciary. For instance, when we are talking about asset declaration, judges should also be able to declare their assets. And it should not be difficult for Nigeria to track movement of funds. The Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit says that if a particular fund comes to any account, the bank should report.
But isn't that asking a private citizen to declare his...
They are public officers. Judges are public officers, So there's nothing wrong.
They are not immune.
They are not immune, from asking them to be subject to the Code of Conduct Bureau. That is the only way you can track assets that are owned by judges, or you can track corruption. So if these practical steps are not taken, what we are saying will just be mere rhetorics. How do you, get to know judges that are corrupt? How do you get to arrest them? How do you get to prosecute them? Because judges are very critical in the fight against corruption. And once we have a compromised judiciary, then we cannot be talking about democracy and good governance. So we support the statement of the CJN. What we are only calling for is that those statements should be transformed into action.
I agree with that. But at the same time, we should give the National Judicial Council some kudos. They've done well in the past, though we expect a lot more. They've had to recommend the sack of some judges. And this, for me, is good, because it will send the right signal to people that once you go against the rule, then you are off the bench. So I think that works for us if we can keep it up.
But why is this so prevalent with judges of state high courts? Yes.
Well, I'm not sure what is being discussed now is so much about the state alone. It's about conflicting orders now.
So many say these conflicting orders come from there, mostly come from state high courts.
Well, I think what some of the how will I put it now, the parallels that we have drawn, a lot of us don't really understand it in terms of being put in black and white. There are some courts that have, state courts, that have the same power as some federal courts. There have been a lot of these reports that have been investigated by the NJC, thrown out. So I don't know if it is prevalent with the state high courts in that manner. If we look at it from the fact that they have, some of them have the same power as some federal courts, because a lot of people believe that every federal court is superior to every state court. It's an error there. So, but if truly,
error?
Yeah, that a lot of people believe erroneously that every federal court is superior to state. all depends at which level you are talking.
All right, Ariwoola, but you know, lawyers are not alone in this trade. We have very senior lawyers who share in this blame by the way and manner they file some of the suits.
Yes.
I think NBA is up to the task.
Yes. I think the NBA also needs to do a lot in terms of reviving its internal mechanism for discipline, apart from the NJC. So because we have seen this happen over time, you know, and even the process of finding the exalted status of SAN, you know, we need to ensure that people who are elevated to this position are people that are credible and that the process or processes are diligently followed. So I think the NBA needs a lot of work to do. I know there are some countries that if your case is bad, your judge will, you know, I mean, your lawyer will advise you and tell you, please go and plead guilty. And even there are some cases you take to court in UK, if they know that this case, you did not handle this way, there is going to be petition, and then sanction against the lawyer. So I think the NBA needs to do a lot of work. It's not just the NJC alone. Because when you are talking about the justice system, it also has to do with the petitioners. You know, are taking a lot of frivolous cases to court when they are not supposed to fight those motions in the first place. So I think the NBA needs to, that's a lot of work.
But apart from conflicting orders, is this also the issue with jurisdiction? Why do you think judges sit and hear cases they know they do not have jurisdiction over?
For me, I think there are two things. The first one is corruption. Then the second one is experience. You know,
experience.
Yes, which has to do with training. You know, because an experienced judge who has handled so many cases should know that, look, this particular case I do not have jurisdiction, and you have to make it clear, you know, at the beginning. But when corruption is involved, some judges might just take over that case, begin to delay the case, probably because they have been compromised. So I think it means that when dealing with this problem, we need to fight corruption, and then we also need to deal with the issue of training to ensure capacity development of judges, especially those that are just newly appointed.
So it's really about lack of experience.
Well, in some cases, it's just outright, like they've described one judge as being, it's not that word is not arrogance. It's just gets excited when cases are before him. A federal judge. Some of them are like that. It's just who they are. Even the kind of language they use in delivering their judgments have been grounds for appeal. Because you see it that this person is biased towards me. Judges are supposed to be people who have good temperament, people who have the capacity to advise lawyers, especially when they are going wrong. People who have the capacity to look at senior advocates of Nigeria and tell them, no, that won't happen in my court. We've seen that on a live judgment when the court had to ignore some senior advocates of Nigeria over their continuous interruption in the process because they feel that they are bigger than the judge, not just in terms of experience, but also their position as sons. And like I said, some of these people, they go to court to intimidate judges. And if you are not sure of yourself as a judge, you can truly be intimidated. So, we've established clearly that some judges take bribe. But we also know some who don't. At least I know one, Ajukula. We've established that some of them, like I said, are not experienced enough to know how to navigate the murky waters of the lawyers who are before them. We've seen lawyers in this country who have gone to court to argue in one direction, and they won the case. They go back a second time after taking a case from the same type of case from, and then they argue in the other direction. And they want that judge to still rule in their favor. And the moment the judge does not, they go to the media. Start their tantrums. So, like you said, I think it's just an holistic thing that we need to do. Everybody in the judicial process must be careful. If you know you have a bad case, though we've been told that lawyers are not in a position to reject cases, but I think that is wrong.
I think it's wrong as well.
Yeah, because if I know you have a bad case, what I'll just advise you is let's go there and plead guilty so that we can get a lesser sentence. But not for me to take money from you. That is even more in political cases where we know that some of these people, these lawyers, especially the senior advocates, some are paid in billions for some of these cases. They just gather about 20 senior advocates and here they are trying to ensure that what we all know went this way. You know, when we newly returned to democracy, and I was with Newswatch magazine, we did a cover story looking at some of the judgments and the kind of things that we came up with at that time, especially for the 2003 election. It was shocking. Extremely shocking. And some of those judges were eventually sacked. They were relieved of their appointments based on those election petitions. Because you could see glaringly from previous rulings that this is it. And they knew. But because money had exchanged hands, they couldn't rule the way it should. Some of them actually, they cave into pressure. In the last election in one of the states, one of the off-cycle elections, I knew of a judge who ran away from his house because they were looking for him with money. I just laughed when I heard the story. Oh, okay, so it's not only journalists, some journalists who run away from taking money that they know their conscience can't live with. Somebody who delivered, what do they call it in judiciary, where a judge goes against two, minority judgment. I said, no, I stand by this. I stand by, they were looking for him to change that judgment. And he said, no, I stand by it. And before you know it, something happened, and then some of those judges who ran together, they fell into trouble. So it happens. But for you to take a particular profession, you must be sure of what you want. Like we said during one of the earlier discussions, some people take certain jobs because they know that is what I want to go and do. Let me go and use it to look for money. They call it retirement money. If it is big enough, they take it, they give the judgment, they damn the consequence.
All right, so Adoye, do you also think that based on this conversation we're having now, there should be a more rigorous screening when it comes to appointments of judges?
Absolutely. There should be, rigorous screening, free from political interference, based on credibility, based on integrity, based on the background checks of the judge. And it's not just about screening, it's also about promotion, of judges. It should be based on the merit. Because if these things are not based on merit, you already compromise the judge. If the judge is going to get appointment by, giving bribe to some people, then that kind of judge is not going to sit down there to dispense justice. Just do dispense justice for personal gain.
There are times your integrity will get tested, just like former governor of Lagos State, Batunde Fashola said. Integrity not be. I remember exactly what.
Yeah, you see, even as journalists, each time we go out, your integrity is tested, and I believe our ability is to respond to the details of our conscience. Because once I don't think there's any journalist whose integrity has not been tested. We have practiced for many years, over and over. But it comes to a certain point that people know you. Don't go to him. He will not take it. So we should be able to listen to our conscience, at least for the good of our society. Because corruption will also go back to us if we continue to encourage it. When we are talking about violence, we are talking about kidnapping, we are talking about instability, we are all victims just because we have a corrupt society that we are afraid to sanitize. And that's why if we want to deal with corruption, it cannot be isolated from the political will of the leaders who are genuinely determined to fight corruption. But once the political class is compromised, the judiciary will also have no other reason than to follow the standard.
All right, so judges on one side, if NBA is to sanction lawyers who file frivolous cases, what sanction do you think befits this?
It's always been there. You can take them to the LPP, which is the Legal Practitioners Council. It's always been there. It's just that people don't want to do what is right. Once there is money involved, people are prepared to sacrifice even their mom, or let's say dad or parents generally. They are prepared to do anything. It's just a matter of getting the right, amount of money, cash, to compromise such people. So lawyers have always been sanctioned, and it shouldn't stop. We should ensure that anybody who does what is wrong, even judges can report lawyers. They do.
Yes.
They do report lawyers to the appropriate bodies. Some lawyers got reported during the last election, petition hearing, for bringing okay. Look at those lawyers who are fined by the courts during the election petition hearing. Because you already knew that this case has been decided by the Supreme Court. At the lower court, it was thrown out. You went through another opening to bring it back to the court, wasting the time of the court. The court said, okay, you are going to pay so much. And I think that is good. When you are made to pay very huge fine, which if you don't pay, your license can be withdrawn.
Is that enough?
At least it's something.
Okay.
It's not about people saying, I can do it and get away with it. It's something. Some have had their licenses suspended. But that we don't hear so much of that in Nigeria. In some other climes, lawyers get their licenses suspended. 6 months, 1 year. When they come back, then they can think better.
I think that's still far enough. What do you think, Adi?
They can think better.
In terms of discipline?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's so. The UK has what they call the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office. If you have any complaint, you take it there. Investigated like KFC. They will do thorough investigation. And if that judge is found wanting, that judge is gone.
It's gone.
It's gone. So, and that's the principle of the rule of law. That nobody, no matter how early placed, not even the president, is about the law.
We had the CJN say there's a mechanism for disciplining judges through the National Judicial Council, but added that it has a cumbersome procedure.
Yeah, but if we are genuinely determined, we can. The NJC has disciplined a lot of judges in the past, so I think it can be done again.
All right, let's move on quickly.